Hello dear students, and welcome to this series of lectures in botany. And today we are talking about a very interesting topic, cyanobacteria, a general account. Let me first tell you what cyanobacteria are. Cyanobacteria, commonly referred as blue-green algae, are the largest and one of the most fascinating, versatile and diverse groups of photosynthetic bacteria that are prokaryotic and often unicellular, though some of them can be found in colonial and filamentous forms as well. They represent one of the major evolutionary lines of bacteria that assume immense significance because of their ecological role, especially in the global carbon and nitrogen cycling. Besides, these bacteria have played a great role in the evolution of aerobic environment on this planet Earth. These cyanobacteria are characterized by certain diagnostic characteristics or features. The important characteristics include, number one, that they are microscopic organisms usually. They are photosynthetic, normally unicellular and gram-negative bacteria they are. Generally, they are aquatic and found in marine sediments as well as some pelagic zones, freshwater lakes, soils. In diverse kinds of environments you can find them. They also inhabit some extreme environments. You can find them under too acidic or under very high temperature conditions as well at different times. These cyanobacteria do have certain characteristic pigments including chlorophyll A and phycobiliproteins, which are generally of two types: phycoerythrin, what we generally also call as red pigments, then the phycocyanin, which impart in fact that blue-green color to them. As I told you earlier that these cyanobacteria are also called as blue-green algae, but you must keep in mind that all of them are not always blue and green only, but we can have varied other colors as well. But almost half of them are blue and green color. Then another characteristic pigment is the yellow phycocyanins. And the main storage product in their cells is the glycogen. And their cell walls are composed of amino acids and sugars. Now, give you a brief idea about the taxonomy, diversity and distribution of these cyanobacteria. The taxonomy of cyanobacteria is a little bit confusing because most of the phycological genera and species which were defined when they were to begin with regarded as algae and were treated as with plants rather than animals, and are now known to be based on unreliable characteristics. For example, the characteristics that may depend on the conditions of growth and so on, and therefore they have been redefined or rather abandoned according to the bacteriological criteria. These cyanobacteria were initially described as algae in the 18th century because they were considered with plants, and the first classification system was therefore based on the International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. Later on, after the prokaryotic nature of the cyanobacteria became more obvious on the basis of their ultrastructural and finer details and even molecular studies, it was proposed that the nomenclature should be governed by the International Code of Nomenclature for bacteria, not for plants. Currently, the phylum Cyanobacteria encompasses 5 subsections, which in fact correspond to 5 orders of the botanical classification in the Burgess Manual of Systematic Bacteriology, which is a authentic classification manual of bacteria. 5 subsections include chlorococales, which include unicellular genera only. Then the plurocapsules, which include large cells subdividing into smaller biocystis. Then oscillotariales, which include simple filamentous forms of these blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. Then the fourth is the nostrocales, which include filamentous but non-branching heterocyst forming taxa. Then fifth is the stygonematales, which include filamentous but branching heterocyst forming species. And to date, Only a few names of cyanobacterial taxa have been validly published according to the bacterial rules, reflecting not only the technical difficulties but also the confusion due to the existence of two nomenclatural systems, as I told you, at the same time by the ICBN, that means International Code for Botanical Nomenclature for Bacteria, as well as International Code for Nomenclature for Plants or Botany. The current taxonomical studies on cyanobacteria are now adopting a rather polyphasic type of approach, which combine genotypic studies with morphological as well as physiological and phenotypic studies. And notwithstanding these taxonomic conflicts, let me tell you that till date, more than 7,500 different species of cyanobacteria have been described and given proper names. So for the distribution of cyanobacteria is concerned, through their 3.5 billion years of evolution and the process of diversification, cyanobacteria are presently cosmopolitan in distribution and are found in diverse habitats including marine, brackish and freshwaters, and at times, as I told you earlier, under too harsh conditions such as geothermal pools, etc. They are globally found across all latitudes and almost at all altitudes, from Antarctic to Saharan rocks, and comprise an important component of the marine phytoplankton. They inhabit both moist and dry soils and constitute what we call as hypoliths, growing in association with algae in quartz containing arctic rocks or their undersurfaces and so on. These cyanobacteria are often symbiotic. Half of them most probably are symbiotic and grow in some plant tissues and partnering with mosses, with lichens, where they fix nitrogen, and then they are also found in association with plant roots, especially for the process of nitrogen fixation, in case of leguminous plants especially. Then they also provide camouflage on sloth, fur, etc. These cyanobacterial symbioses involve taxonomically diverse hosts ranging from some diatoms and dinoflagellates to sponges, cnidarians, ascidians, some worms and corals, and so on. And this cyanobacterial symbiosis is found in many lichens and amongst bryophytes. You'll find them in liverworts, in hornworts, in mosses, and also amongst the pteridophytes you will find these symbioses, especially in Azolla, and in gymnosperms you will find them in cycads very prominently, and even in angiosperms in Gonera and other related genera. Given this distribution, let me tell you that they are a successful group of organisms so for their ability to tolerate a wide range of conditions is concerned. And that's why you will find them under marine conditions, both littoral and pelagic zones. You will find them under freshwaters, you will find them under hot springs, you will find them in terrestrial habitats, even including a number of soil floral associates and so on. Now a basic and important question is, what makes these cyanobacteria exceptionally important? Let me tell you here that cyanobacteria do have a great evolutionary importance. In fact, they are prokaryotic organisms which are known to be the earliest forms of life throughout the time they have adapted to the changing earth conditions, and in turn they have helped Earth's atmosphere to evolve in a different way. Fossil cyanobacteria have been found in rocks almost 3.5 billion years old, and they are commonly called as stromatolites, and we refer sometimes them as stromatolite colonies in rocks. They are believed to have been the first oxygen-producing organisms and to have been responsible for generating the oxygen in the atmosphere, thus profoundly influencing the subsequent course of evolution. This is very important, their contribution. On the other hand, this importance stems from their endosymbiotic relationships. I mean, we believe that chloroplasts in the eukaryotic cells basically have originated from these blue-green algae that formed in the course of evolution, sort of a symbiotic relationship. It was in fact Schimper who first noted that the chloroplasts actually represent the symbiotic algae. Later on, Altman, somewhere in 1890, developed the general theory of endosymbiosis, including mitochondria as well. And this endosymbiotic theory of evolution, in fact, states that during evolution of eukaryotes, certain prokaryotes, I mean pre-mitochondria and pre-chloroplast type organisms, developed intracellular symbiosis with the eukaryotic cells. And with the passage of time, the partners in this association or symbiosis, bacterial structures and functions were gradually lost. The theory appears by and large plausible because large number of biochemical, cytological and genetic characteristics of chloroplasts and of course of the mitochondria as well show much more similarity and homology with prokaryotes such as cyanobacteria than eukaryotes. The molecular level similarities that chloroplasts share with the prokaryotes include especially the DNA circularity, rare occurrence of the introns, protein biosynthesis initiation sequences, and also the ribosomal RNA sequences and size and also the membrane composition. Long course of evolution, in fact, of these cyanobacteria is evidenced by the oldest fossils. Let me just give you some examples here that 3.5 billion year old carbonaceous microfossils were recovered from South Africa, and less than 3.5 billion year old filaments and microbial fossils were also then recovered from Australia, and recently 3 billion year old stromatolites from South Africa and Australia both. They are strong evidences in favor of their long evolution. Now, as I told you that the contribution of cyanobacteria in the production of aerobic environment or in the creation of an aerobic environment on Earth is immense, because these were the first organisms to have two photosystems and to produce, the photosystem first and photosystem second, and that enabled them to produce organic material and give off oxygen as a byproduct. And that oxygen slowly and steadily basically lit up and created an oxygenic atmosphere that we are enjoying right now. And very important to the evolution of Earth's oxidizing atmosphere has been their contribution. Of course, this oxygen-rich environment has its own limitations as well, the discussion of which is beyond the scope of this lecture. Cyanobacteria, besides having these evolutionary significances, do have some important economic perspectives as well. They are economically very important. For example, the heterocyst-bearing forms perform the function of nitrogen fixation. Hence, they are used as biofertilizers in paddy fields and other agricultural crops to increase the yield and so on, with so many environmental benefits if we compare them with the chemical type of fertilizers. Then the second importance is that non-toxic forms of these cyanobacteria, such as spirulina, are cultured in large tanks as protein-rich animals and feed. And sometimes we use these single-cell proteins in planes as a food or in space as a food. Then nostoc, for example, is cultured and used as a feed for aquatic animals. Anabina, one more blue-green alga, produces hydrogen in a bioreactor, and this hydrogen economy is going to be the economy of future, very important sector. Then next importance is, of course, the negative importance, that these cyanobacteria, most of them are bloom-forming algae, or you can say cyanobacteria more correctly, especially Anabina, nostoc, cylindrospermum, and so on. They make drinking waters poisonous, which can cause deaths of cattle, birds, and even humans. And these forms may even interfere with the water filtration systems, apart from causing so many other types of ecological problems, especially leading to the depletion of aquatic biodiversity. Let's have a word now about their structural organization. So far, the cyanobacteria are concerned, in contrast to eukaryotic microalgae. Cyanobacteria are prokaryotes, therefore they do not possess a membrane-bound subcellular organelles. They do not have a discrete membrane-bound nucleus. Then they possess a cell wall which is based more upon a peptidoglycan type of organization than that we find in rest of the plants or the algae. So in fact, the cell wall structure is similar to that of gram-negative bacteria more. And then they do contain 70S ribosomes rather than 80S ribosomes, which are characteristics of eukaryotes, and 70S of prokaryotes. Cyanobacterial cells range in size from 0.5 to 1 micrometer or even to 40 micrometers in diameter at times. And some cyanobacterial forms are complex and multilayered, especially photosynthetic membrane systems composed of mucilaginous envelopes or sheaths that bind filaments or groups of cells together. And some filamentous cyanobacteria form heterocystis. These are the rounded cells that are generally distributed along a filament or at one end of the filament. And heterocystis are in fact the single sites for the nitrogen fixation in the heterocyst cyanobacterial forms. So for the different forms of cyanobacteria are concerned, they vary from unicellular forms with mucilaginous envelope around to different colonial forms having different types of colonies, and then filaments which may be either uniseriate or multiseriate. Uniseriate, I mean to say in a single row, or multiseriate when you have more than one rows, which may do not have necessarily true branching, what we sometimes call as trichomes also. And these trichomes especially are the row of cells with the mucilaginous sheath or the layer of mucilage outside the cell wall. This mucilaginous sheath in case of cyanobacteria has some specific functions to perform, especially the function of protection of cells from drying and involving in gliding type of movements and so on. And these sheaths are often colored, and at times you will find that these cyanobacteria do impart certain colors to different kinds of things or habitats where they do occur. And depending upon different pH conditions, it will be red under acidic conditions, blue under basic conditions, and yellow or brown under high salt conditions, and so on and so forth. Heterocyst is a special feature of these cyanobacteria, especially the nitrogen-fixing cyanobacterial species. This is a thick-walled cell, apparently hollow-looking, but larger than rest of the vegetative cells of the filament, the function of which, especially in the anaerobic environment, is the nitrogen fixation. I mean, there has to be a strict anaerobic environment within the heterocyst itself, because nitrogenase enzyme is very sensitive to oxygen. This heterocyst, as I told you, is larger than rest of the vegetative cells. It is much more thick-walled and therefore does not allow atmospheric gases to enter, especially the oxygen, to which nitrogenase is very sensitive, as I told you. More or less, they are photosynthetically inactive, and no carbon dioxide fixation or oxygen evolution generally take place in this heterocyst. And this heterocyst formation is triggered by sometimes molybdenum and low nitrogen conditions. While transforming into a heterocyst, certain changes do occur in a cyanobacterial cell, such as rearrangement of cells' internal membranes into concentric or reticulate pattern. The phycobilioproteins, which I told you earlier are characteristic of cyanobacteria, they become low in concentration. Very important thing is that photosystem second is discarded, but photosystem first is still functional. Thereby, no evolution of oxygen takes place, which is critical to the nitrogenase enzyme that is extremely sensitive to oxygen. Nitrogen, as we know, the importance of cyanobacteria or cyanobacterial mutualism in the process of nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen is a limiting nutrient which is necessary for the production of amino acids, proteins, and other building blocks of life. Of course, our atmosphere is very rich in nitrogen. We have around 78% nitrogen present in the atmosphere. Yet, most of the life forms do not have the ability to utilize or metabolize this nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen directly. Only cyanobacteria and few other prokaryotic bacteria have been bestowed with this significance of fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, which collectively call diazotrophs. And of these diazotrophs, cyanobacteria are special in evolving the oxygen during photosynthesis. Since, as I told you, that the mechanism has to be such to prevent basically the diffusion of oxygen into the heterocysts, because nitrogenase is very sensitive to oxygen. It may be a heterocyst may employ a spatial mechanism or a temporal mechanism to basically overcome this, remaining away from the oxygen. So for the movement of cyanobacteria is concerned, they are not flagellates generally. They do not have flagella or structures that enable them or enhance their movements. And that's why they excrete mucilage, which helps in sort of a jet propulsion and gliding type of movements. Then they have that helical type of the structure or fibers which send wave contractions that also help in their movement. An important aspect is the cyanobacterial reproduction. Cyanobacteria are generally reproducing asexually. I mean, the only means of reproduction in cyanobacteria is asexual. Filamentous forms reproduce by trichome fragmentation or by formation of special structures, what we call as hormogonia. Hormogonia are distinct reproductive segments. They do exhibit active gliding motion upon their liberation and gradually develop into new trichomes. Then hormogonia formation takes place, as I told you. Then endospores or echinete formation, especially under harsh conditions, is an important process of reproduction. Fragmentation of the thallus, then the formation of exospores is also a good mechanism. Hormogonia, let me tell you here in a little detail that they are short piece of trichomes found in filaments. It detaches from the parent filament and then glides away to develop into a new individual later on. Echinates are special thick-walled structures, or what we sometimes also call as resting spores, whose primary function is to resist unfavorable environmental conditions. They are generally produced by these blue-green algae under harsh conditions to overcome those conditions, and after the favorable conditions do return, they also restart their activity. And they appear as larger cells in chains of different lengths than heterocysts, and they generally lose buoyancy because of their more weight. Fragmentation, as I told you, is another mechanism of reproduction whereby the filament breaks up into different segments and each segment later on develops into a new individual. So we must know that they have by and large simpler reproductive mechanisms, more asexual than sexual. And to conclude with, let me tell you that in this lecture what we have learned is that cyanobacteria is an important group of organisms that have evolved under very harsh conditions of the Precambrian Earth, and their modern representatives do retain a remarkable ability to adapt to or survive within extreme conditions as well. Of course, they are found what we perceive as the normal environments. In distribution, they are cosmopolitan with some elements of endemism and habitat specificity as well recorded in them. They dominate marine, freshwaters, and even some terrestrial ecosystems across all latitudes and longitudes of the Earth. And the most important thing regarding them is that they have played a great role in the evolution of oxygen-rich Earth and play a major ecological role, especially in the global carbon and nitrogen cycling. And most important of all, let me tell you that the chloroplast of living plants now do owe their origin to these cyanobacterial symbioses, in the partnership of which they, during the course of time, lost their independence. Then the reproduction, as I told you, is simpler, mainly through the asexual means. And lastly, let me tell you, recently the cyanobacterial field is a hot topic of research, and the application of molecular tools in combination with classical morphological techniques has begun to provide new insights into the real diversity of cyanobacteria and their biogeographical distribution. And that's all about cyanobacterial general account, and to talk about other aspects we'll meet next. Till then, goodbye.